5 years had settled into my life like a quiet tide since the divorce, and at 62, I, Margaret Harper, had grown accustomed to the stillness that filled my evenings in Haven Bay, Maine. The nights were my own, spent in a cozy, cedar-clad cottage where silence wrapped around me like a familiar quilt, soothing, yet heavy with unvoiced thoughts. But one Tuesday night, a moment so vivid it etched itself into my soul, changed the rhythm of my solitary world. As I lay in bed, weariness cloaking me like a thick mist, the house hummed with its usual calm. The groan of old floorboards, the faint drip of a faucet, these were the lullabies of my nights. Yet that night, the quiet felt fragile, shattered by a gentle knock at the front door, soft but persistent, like a pulse in the darkness. I stirred, blinking into the shadows, a flicker of unease tightening my chest. "Liam?" I called, my voice a whisper, testing the stillness. "Mom," came the reply. A soft echo from the dark, familiar yet laced with something new. The door creaked open, revealing my son, Liam, in the doorway. At 25, he was no longer the boy who'd raced through these rooms. His presence, now that of a young man, not a child. His silhouette, framed by the faint glow of the hall's light, carried a hesitation that tugged at my heart. His face, half hidden but expressive, sparked a fierce maternal instinct, though a quiet thread of worry wove through it. "Can't sleep," he admitted, his eyes fixed on the worn floor as if his words carried a weight too heavy to lift. "Come here," I said, my voice warm, patting the space beside me on the bed. After a brief pause, he crossed the room, the floorboards sighing beneath his steps. He slipped under the covers, the bed groaning softly under his weight. We lay side by side, inches apart, his warmth grounding and immediate. I tried to focus on the ceiling, but my gaze drifted to him, noting how time had reshaped him. The soft curves of childhood were gone. His features were sharper, his frame broader. A young man forged by years I'd only half seen. Pride mingled with confusion, a quiet ache for the boy he'd been, and a strange wonder at the man he was now. "Mom," he murmured, his eyes meeting mine in the dim light. "This house feels too still sometimes, like it's waiting for something." His voice held a fragile depth, a vulnerability that left me speechless. I reached out, my hand resting on his shoulder, a simple gesture of comfort. In a heartbeat, he turned, enveloping me in a warm embrace, his arms wrapping around me with a strength that startled me. His breath was steady, warm against my neck, his heartbeat a quiet echo against mine. The closeness stirred something unexpected, a flutter in my chest, both comforting and disorienting. I held him back, my arms folding around him, feeling the rhythm of his breath, steady and sure. "It feels heavy sometimes," he whispered, his voice soft against my ear. "I'm here," I replied, my voice barely audible. "Always." But inside, my heart raced, a swirl of emotions, gratitude for his trust, unease at the moment's intensity. Liam's embrace, innocent in its heart, felt unexpectedly close, its warmth more intimate than I'd expected. It was a mother's instinct to hold him, to ease his restlessness, but the moment's depth left me wrestling with questions I couldn't name. "Thanks, Mom," he said, his voice fading as his breathing slowed, his body easing into sleep. He drifted off, his face serene in the moonlight filtering through the curtains. But I lay awake, my mind circling one question. What happened tonight? The closeness we'd shared felt layered, a connection that blurred lines I'd always known. As dawn's first light slipped into the room, painting Liam's sleeping face with a golden glow, he looked untouched by the world's weight. His features Softened mamasted in sleep, echoed the boy I'd raised, yet the man he'd become was undeniable. My heart churned with confusion, a tangle of emotions I couldn't unravel. I slipped from bed, craving the clarity of routine, and padded to the kitchen, the cool tiles grounding me. The house was still, save for the soft hum of the fridge, and I needed the simplicity of a task to quiet my thoughts. I gathered ingredients for pancakes, the familiar motions, sifting flour, cracking eggs, a small anchor in the night's turbulence. The aroma of batter on the griddle filled the air, a comforting ritual. But my mind replayed the night, Liam's quiet words, the warmth of his embrace, the weight in his gaze. I wanted to be the mother he needed, to keep our bond clear, but something had shifted, leaving me adrift. As I flipped the pancakes, I heard Liam stir, his footsteps soft as he appeared in the doorway. His eyes, still heavy with sleep, held a cautious edge. "Morning," he said, his voice low, tinged with something unspoken. "Morning, love," I replied, forcing a smile, aiming for normalcy. But I felt his gaze, intense and searching, different from the easy looks of years past. It carried a warmth, a focus that felt almost too aware, as if he saw me anew. I focused on the pancakes, but his eyes seemed to follow every move. How I brushed a strand of hair behind my ear, the way my hands gripped the spatula. The kitchen, usually a haven, felt charged with a strange tension. Liam's presence, once pure comfort, now carried a weight I couldn't name. He'd always been my joy, his laughter filling this house. But this morning, a subtle distance lingered. His eyes, caught in the soft morning light, seemed to hold thoughts he wasn't ready to share. I set a plate of pancakes before him, the golden stack steaming gently. "Dig in," I said, my voice tinged with a quiet sadness. As he took the plate, our fingers brushed, our eyes meeting in a brief, searching glance. I saw my own uncertainty reflected in his gaze, a silent question neither of us could answer. At breakfast, Liam avoided my eyes, focusing on his plate, but each time I moved, reaching for the syrup or refilling my coffee, his attention returned, heavy with that same intensity. The air felt thick, a tension humming beneath the surface. Inside, I urged myself to understand this shift, to unravel his gaze, but I didn't know where to start. Liam's behavior wove a complex web of emotions within me: love, confusion, a quiet fear of what this change meant. I wanted only to be his mother, to hold space for him, but the night's warmth and this morning's unease hinted at something deeper, something I wasn't ready to name. As the day unfolded, I carried the weight of that night, Liam's embrace lingering like a song I couldn't shake. The house, with its familiar creaks and soft light, felt altered, as if it too were holding its breath. By evening, exhaustion tugged at my eyes, the night's events still swirling. The solitude of my room, once a sanctuary, felt heavy, the silence amplifying my thoughts. Liam's demeanor was shifting, his presence carrying a new intensity that left me both comforted and unsettled. I drifted into sleep, but it was restless, my eyes fluttering open in the dark, stirred by an unnameable feeling. A soft sound broke the silence, pulling me from the edges of sleep. My eyes adjusted to the dimness, and I saw a shadow moving quietly. My heart quickened, a shiver running through me. Then, in the moonlight spilling through the window, I recognized Liam, slipping through the half-open door. His eyes gleamed in the shadows, carrying the same fervor as before. The air felt charged, his presence, at this hour, unusual yet resonant. He stepped closer, his face clear in the moonlight, his expression holding a resolve I'd never seen. A silent cry rose within me. "This isn't right. We need to stop." In a fleeting moment, Liam leaned in, his breath warm against my cheek. a gesture filled with unspoken emotion. Time seemed to pause, the world narrowing to the space between us. His forehead rested briefly against mine, his eyes carrying a pain that tugged at my heart. This wasn't the bond I'd known as his mother. My heart pounded, a chaotic rhythm, as I gently pulled back. "Liam, no," I said, my voice trembling, the words fading into the air. He stepped back, a flicker of disappointment in his eyes, yet he lingered, silent. The space between us heavy with unvoiced thoughts. "This isn't right," I repeated, my voice unsteady, my mind reeling. The intensity of his gaze, the way he seemed to see me, not just as his mother but as something more, stirred a storm of emotions I couldn't grasp. Liam hesitated, then leaned closer again, his breath brushing my cheek in a gesture of quiet need. I stepped back gently, my movement a reminder that our bond had boundaries, that closeness didn't mean crossing lines. The night left a tangle of questions, heavy and unspoken. By morning, Liam was gone from the room, leaving me alone with the weight of what had happened. I took a deep breath, striving to steady myself, and slipped out of the house, exhaustion etched in my eyes, a hollow ache in my chest. Each step felt heavy, as if I were wading through uncertainty. The streets of Haven Bay were quiet, the early morning light casting long shadows across the sidewalks. I walked, hoping the crisp air would clear my mind, but the night's events clung to me. Liam's gaze, his unexpected closeness, the shift in his presence. None of it fit the simple story of mother and son. I wanted to bury the feelings, to restore clarity, but a crack was forming in the foundation of what I'd known. Why was I so shaken? Had I been seeing Liam through the lens of childhood, blind to the man he'd become? Or was I reading too much into moments that were, at heart, innocent? The questions swirled, each leading to another, none offering answers. Back home, the day stretched on, each moment tinged with Liam's gaze. I busied myself with small tasks, watering the lavender on the porch, sorting old letters, hoping to ground myself in routine. But the house felt different, as if it too were wrestling with our changed dynamic. Liam moved through the day quietly, his usual warmth tempered by a cautious distance. At dinner, he sat across from me, his eyes flickering to mine only briefly, each glance carrying a weight I couldn't read. "How's your day been?" I asked, my voice aiming for lightness. "Okay," he said, his tone short, his focus on his plate. The silence between us was new, a space where words once flowed, now filled with unspoken thoughts. As night fell, I retreated to my room, the solitude both a comfort and a weight. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the moments, the knock, the embrace, the intensity of his gaze. I wanted to be his mother, to hold space for him, but the lines felt blurred, the boundaries uncertain. Was I misreading his actions, projecting my confusion onto innocent moments? Or was there something deeper, something neither of us was ready to name? The questions looped endlessly, each a thread in a tapestry I couldn't see. Sleep came fitfully, broken by the weight of my thoughts. In the quiet, I heard the soft creak of floorboards, and my eyes snapped open. Liam stood in the doorway again, his silhouette framed by moonlight. His eyes held that same resolve, that same unspoken need. "Liam," I said, my voice steady but soft. "We need to talk about this." He nodded, stepping back, the distance between us a silent acknowledgement of the boundaries we needed to keep. The night ended there, with questions unanswered, but a quiet understanding that we'd need to find a way forward together. The next morning, I rose early, the dawn light filtering through the kitchen window as I brewed coffee. Liam joined me later, his presence quieter but less charged. "Morning," he said, his voice softer, as if the night had shifted something for him, too. "Morning," I replied, offering a small smile. We sat in the kitchen, the scent of coffee grounding us, and for the first time in days, the silence felt lighter. There were still questions, still emotions to untangle, but in that moment, I knew we'd navigate this new chapter, honoring the bond we shared while keeping the lines clear. The path ahead would be complex, but it was ours to walk, together.
Thank you for listening. Please share your thoughts, like this video if you found it helpful, and subscribe for more.